Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Camera with AndyGames. This is the podcast where I interview streamers and content creators with the sole purpose of getting to know the person a little bit better behind the camera. Tonight's episode, we have BLJuggler as our guest. Callum, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I am doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast tonight. So you know the format. I sent you the questions in advance, just the whole matter of just talking a bit about yourself, getting to know you and your background and stuff. Hence the name Behind the Camera. So let's get it going. So first of all, take us back to the beginning of your gaming journey. Like, is this something that's always been like a part of your life, or is this something that you fell into later in life? So tell us about how you started in gaming and how it led on to streaming.
It's actually a really quite an amusing story. So I remember I must have been about 7 or 8 years old, maybe six actually, between 6 and 8 years old, and gaming has always been in my family, like ever since way back when. Like my brothers and sisters were into it, and my mum and dad were into it, and all kinds of stuff. But I remember it really clicked for me when back in the days in the United Kingdom, we used to have milkmen. So a guy came around on a little electric powered cart and dropped milk at your door. You like paid like a subscription for that to happen. And our milkman actually sold us an Atari 2600
Oh wow.
with like a box of games, like loads of games. It must have been about 30 games, 30 cartridges. So my first real sort of click with gaming was the Atari, and I remember I played the really cooked Pac-Man port they did
Yeah.
a lot. Gallagher, so much Gallagher, and like games like that basically. So that was like my proper in, and then shortly after that, my mum bought a Game Boy, like a OG Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just playing Super Mario Land and always not being able to get past the water stage. And then just playing lots of Game Boy Tetris. And that's where it kind of started. Yeah.
I
And
can't
then
get.
shortly after,
Sorry.
go on.
No. Sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you there.
No, it's all good. But then shortly after that, I got my own personal console, which was the SNES. And then I remember because I was only allowed one when I was 8 years old. That was like my mum's thing. It's just like you can only have an SNES when you're 8, even though I have consoles already. So it's a weird one. Yeah.
It's
So that's where it all
quite a
started.
good criteria. That's just 8 years old, you get your first console. I still can't get over the fact that, like, the milkman sold you, like, you got a console from the milkman, like, because
I know.
as obviously great British culture goes, like, usually people get an extra sibling from the milkman, as it were. It's like, oh yeah, we just got a just sold us an Atari. Like, that's awesome. Like, so how did that all, like, kind of lead into you streaming then over a number of years after?
So I was really into gaming, like growing up. I was a big Nintendo fan. Any Nintendo console that came out, I managed to procure through Christmases and birthdays and whatever. So like apart from the NES, so I'd have like the SNES, and then I had the Nintendo 64, GameCube, the Nintendo Wii, Switch, all of that stuff through sort of my life growing up. I had PlayStation involved in there and stuff like that, and all of that to play DDR and stuff. But it came to a point where I was getting really into circus because I'm a circus performer. I'm a juggler. And there was a point in like so there was like steady gaming up until like my mid-20s. And then it got to a point where I remember I needed money to go to a juggling festival. And I was a bartender at the time, so I didn't have a lot of money. And I had a Wii U at the time, and that was like the sort of last console I bought before this point. And I was like, if I want to go to this circus festival and actually work on what I'm really into, I need to sell my Wii U. So I sold my Wii U and got the money to go to the circus festival. And then I didn't game properly for a really long time. It must have been about 6-7 years
Oh wow.
until 2020. And then obviously lockdown happened, and there wasn't much circus performance going on because there was no events. There was nowhere to practice really.
Yeah.
My flat's really small. And I'm like, well, it's a good time to kind of get back into gaming. I already had like an emulator on my laptop, so I was like dipping my toes in already. But once lockdown kind of hit, I was like, well, I need to keep my mind busy somehow.
Yeah, of
So
course. Yeah.
I kind of got back into gaming, and that was kind of through speedrunning because I remember I watched a Chi stream. I was watching loads of speedruns
Yeah.
at the time, and I watched a Chi stream, and he was teaching like his friends how to do cannon lists. And I was watching it, and I was like, "That seems pretty simple. I think I could do that." And then I got my like really really bad like USB N64 controller, which I use for emulator on my laptop. Tried it and got it, and it just kind of went from there, really.
Yeah.
And I remember like learning the strats, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should stream on Twitch, and like made like the worst kind of Twitch layout ever with the worst audio. It's considerable upgrade now to what it was. Yeah, I just started doing 16 star. It was fun, and then shortly after that, I remember I was shopping online for N64 consoles just randomly. I was teaching English online at the time to make money. Still do that.
Yeah.
And I looked on eBay and I saw a Japanese Nintendo console, and it was the exact amount that I had in my PayPal account to the
Oh,
penny.
wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's a sign. I'm going to get that. So I bought the N64 and then the cartridge, and then switched to console pretty early on.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was just been doing okay for myself. Circus started picking back up, but I kept up the streaming, and now it's like a big part of my life. I've worked on the production a lot more. I've learned a lot. And luckily, all the equipment I have crosses over into my other job, which is teaching English online. It's because I use all this stuff for that.
Yeah.
So tax deductions, yeah. But yeah. So that's kind of how it went. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's pretty amazing because it's funny because a lot of people who I have spoke to about this, they have said more or less the same thing about like their setups just being like a laptop sitting in front of them or something like that. But it's like the sort of most basic sort of thing, barely even like maybe like speaking into their webcam for their audio, things like that, and then it is amazing like how it grows in terms of like getting into your setup, and then you realize everything like okay, there is just gameplay is like obviously a fundamental part of it, but also your setup is also like very very important too. Like for take your setup, you have your lights and your poster in your background. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
a nice little part of it to like ambient sort
Mm.
of like I mean this is why I have a blurred background on mine. Like for those who are
Mhm.
listening and not watching, thank God you can't see my background. This is why I'd have it blurred because it is an absolute shit heap back here. But and it is just like the aesthetic is important as well. So just on the sort of still on the topic of gaming, like your DDR as well. So I know
Yeah.
that you kind of do a lot of that as well outside of Mario 64. So is that
Mm.
just something that you've always been good at? Like how did you come into doing that? Because obviously
So
I've never seen anybody kind of shred on it like you have, and it is absolutely incredible. So for those who do not know Callum, definitely check out his DDR streams as well. They are phenomenal. But yeah,
yeah,
tell us about that as well.
need to start doing those again. Lose a few pounds. No, I play DDR, which is for those of you who don't know, is Dance Dance Revolution. It's the game with 4 arrows on the floor. It's a rhythm game. And where that kind of started, I used to go on holiday in Devon in England, to like the same place every year.
Mhm.
It was called Dawlish Sands. And like after a couple of years of going there, I was just going to the arcade, and I got really, really, really into playing DDR in the arcade. Like,
Mhm.
I remember, like, I would get like £10 or £20 every day as like my holiday allowance, and I would literally go to the arcade, and it would be like £2 to go on like Coca-Cola, and then the rest would just be in the DDR machine. Um, and so yeah, ever since I was like 10, I've been kind of doing the rhythm game grinds. And it's only recently since I have somewhat adult money that I can procure things such as good DDR pads, which have a
Yeah.
bar. Um, and I actually shipped mine from Poland.
Oh wow.
And it could cost me quite a lot of money. Um, but I was like, you know what? I've always wanted one. It was always been my dream to have one at home, which is good. Like not these like foldable, like ones that just move around on the floor, like made out of fabric.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm gonna get a good one, and I got it for it was a birthday present to myself
Of course.
this year.
Gotta treat yourself.
Um,
Gotta treat yourself to these things.
and yeah, with my green screen, it makes a pretty nice stream setup. Like to have the arrows behind me dancing on the
Yeah, like I quite
pad
like
and
that
stuff
because
like
it does
that.
immerse. Everything just immerses into itself. Like, and I
Mm.
think it really does look good. And you play that on expert as well, don't you? Like that's your main thing. Like if you're not doing it whilst juggling, which again is something
Oh,
another incredible thing that I've seen.
the juggling and DDR grind is a very new grind, but yeah, yeah, I'm not the highest level. Like it can get pretty crazy. Like so we have like difficulty ratings of the songs, and it goes up to kind of 19.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of songs I can do are in the 11 to 13 range comfortably.
Wow.
I think the highest one I've cleared is a 15. So I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not like, you know, competition worthy. Like there are people out there who are like very, very insane at these games, and
Mm-hmm.
every note they hit is like super perfect, like within like the timing window of the highest score you can get, and consistently throughout the whole song. And we're talking like milliseconds, like
Oh wow, seriously.
crazy
Yeah.
levels of accuracy in the rhythm game kind of scene. But for me, it's just like I like to push myself a bit, but for me, it's more like a fitness and have fun kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
I'm not grinding for PFCs or MFCs. I'm just grinding to have fun. I like to get full combos,
Mm-hmm.
like hit every note. That's fine, but I'm not going for like crazy levels of accuracy and stuff like that. It's just to get me moving and to have some fun. And I just like rhythm games. Beat Saber is another one I play. Um,
Yes.
like so, I used to do like a mixed reality Beat Saber setup a while back, and that was fun. It stopped working. I think I know why it stopped working, but I've been too lazy to set it up again because it's like the most complicated stream thing I set up. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But it's really cool when it works. But yeah, I keep meaning to set that up again, but I look at my green screen and the pile of clothes in front of it, and I'm like, not today. Uh, we'll see.
Oh, I feel that as well. So like these games, like, you know, like the rhythm based games like DDR, Beat Saber, do they go like professional in terms of like, you know, you could say competition level? Like is that like at a pro gaming level sort of thing?
DDR definitely.
Yeah.
DDR is like there's a world championship every year that's held
Oh
in like
wow.
Japan, and it's a big part of culture in Korea as well. Korea there's a massive rhythm game scene in Korea. It's only recently in the last few years though that people from Western countries have been invited to actually go and compete
Oh, okay.
um, in DDR kind of tournaments, because it was very just kind of held in the East, and like it's kind of weird, like the way like DDR cabinets, the older DDR cabinets were kind of sourced in like the UK and in America and stuff like that. They were actually pretty bootlegged. Like they weren't really official, which is pretty funny. But it's not until DDR-A, which is like one of the recent ones, which came out in the last few years, that everything's now online, and
Yeah.
all of the machines worldwide are like connected, so people can upload their scores and see how they're doing against people. So it's a lot more connected now. But yeah, DDR definitely has a big tournament scene, and there's small tournaments and larger tournaments and world tournaments and stuff. Beat Saber, I'm not so sure. Probably,
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Yeah.
be surprised
Yeah.
if there wasn't. But Beat Saber has a very good online kind of connectivity. So there are leaderboards,
Yeah.
but when it comes to in-person events, I'm not sure, but probably,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely online.
No, it's interesting because in terms of my experience with DDR, it's I remember like God, I must have been a kid or something at the time, and it was always one of those things where like you know like you said about those like really flimsy horrible mats that just plugged into the back of the PS2 sort of thing, and like it was always one of those things like, you know, being like being a boy growing up like, you know, in England, and it was like sort of it was always someone's sister or like a girl you knew had the dance mat because it wasn't a boy thing to do, but like, and I remember those mats and just being like kind of like, how the hell do you do this? And then more recently, I was in Liverpool at the start of the year, and I was actually with a group of viewers who I would consider friends and not viewers. Just before anybody live in the Twitch chat comes at me for that, and we were in NQ64, this gaming bar, and I was just like, oh yeah, look, DDR, let's give this a go. I think I lasted 3 seconds, and I thought it was gonna like chuck a fucking hernia or something at that point. Like it was, oh my god, I have two left feet. I believe is the term.
It's pretty hardcore cardio. Like it's like quite similar to like, you know, doing jump rope essentially. Like
Yeah.
it's, which is like a very hardcore form of cardio. So that's like, you know, yeah, I could see like it wears me out. Like that's
No,
why I
for
do it.
sure, for sure.
Like so. Mm.
So, okay, so whether it be in the streaming space or not, then you're essentially a round the clock performer. You know, like obviously you have your
Yeah.
circus performer, and you know, and being a streamer, like you know, by definition, you're essentially an entertainer, regardless of what way you look at it. Because so, you know, and as your name suggests, you're a juggler. So, what can you tell us about how you got into this, sort of space? Obviously, this came before your streaming, but not before your gaming. So how did you get into this industry, and does it go any further than just juggling?
You're talking about circus and juggling.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Circus came around. Well, I kind of had dipped my toes into circus when I was younger, but I wasn't really pushing it because I remember I went to Butlins. Like a lot of these things stem from holidays. I'm just realizing now. I went to Butlins and there was like a fad at the Butlins I went to, Butlins Skegness, fine place. And everyone, all the kids were doing Diablo. If you don't know what Diablo is, it's like an hourglass thing that it's spun like a big yo-yo. It's spun on a string between two sticks.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
And everyone was doing Diablo, and I was like, oh, I want to go with that because I did a bit of yo-yo and stuff like that. And my dad knew how to do a bit, and he was like, oh, let's get you one and I'll show you how to do it. And so he showed me how to do it, and I spent the rest of that holiday just throwing a Diablo really, really high and catching it. Like that's like literally all I was doing. So when I was about 10 years old, I was doing that, but I didn't really push it. It was just a thing that I did to pass the time. It wasn't like I didn't really learn many tricks. It was just throwing it really high, or maybe doing one other trick I think I knew. And then it was just a short phase, which kind of dwindled out. And then I didn't pick up circus again until I was about 24, I think. Maybe a bit earlier, 22, somewhere in my early to mid 20s. I went to me and my friends used to go party in the woods, like near where I lived. There's lots of like open green space near where I used to live in my hometown. And my friend was like, "Oh, I'm going to do a fire spin tonight. We're gonna go play with fire." And I'm like, "That sounds cool. I'll join." And I remember we just went to the woods and we had loads of paraffin and we were playing with fire toys and I had a go. It's not something you should have a go at just randomly, by the way. This is like FYI, like don't try this at home. Do as I say, not as I do.
Just
But
always try in
this
the
is what
woods.
happened. Yeah. This is what happened. And I had a go. I was around people who knew what they were doing, so it's fine. And I played with some fire poi. If you don't know what poi are, it's things you spin around on strings in like geometrical rhythmic patterns. So I got into poi and I spun a staff around for a bit. I was like, oh, this is fun. I think the next day or 2 days after, I went to Oddballs, which is a juggling shop in London. And I bought myself a set of glow poi and a Diablo, and I started grinding poi and Diablo, and got really, really into it. I don't know if you tell anything I get into, I get really, really into. So like, there's no like real hobby. It's like I do it a lot or not at all. So I got into poi, and all I did was poi. I was working in the bar, and then I was doing poi, and then when I clocked off, I would do poi in the nightclub to practice, and like so I was just doing poi for hours a day, and a bit of Diablo on the side, and then met a group of people in my area. We had a hall, which we'd go to every week, so we had like a regular kind of practice space. And then eventually I learned to juggle, juggling balls, clubs, rings, the usual stuff. I got really into that. It's quite a fun grind. And then shortly after that, I found hoops, and then I realized hoops and poi have with a hula hoop. There's can be elements of both juggling and poi. So it's like, okay, that's good. That's like a combo thing I can do. And then I got really, really into hoop juggling about 10 years ago now. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. Started as a hobby, got really into it, and then I was going to like events, like circus and juggling events. And then slowly over time, I got good enough that I started doing like small kind of gigs and started to get paid for it. And then it really clicked when I got into circus school. I remember I went to India, did the classic go to India, find myself for a couple of months, kind of standard strat. And then, but I actually did. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I went to India, and I was staying in a room in a hotel which my auntie owns. So
Oh.
I had just this place in India to like stay. And I remember I was fixing my teeth there because it's cheaper. And I'd actually intended to travel a lot more when I was there, but the teeth fixing took a long time. So I was just stuck in Goa. I just moved lots of chairs out in the hotel kind of courtyard. And I was just practicing hoop juggling a lot, like every day for
Nice.
like 2 months. Whilst I was in India, I applied to circus school, Circa Media in Bristol, and got an audition. And then I remember I came back from India, went straight to a circus event, and then very shortly after that had an audition for circus school. I got into circus school and then spent 2 years at circus school. Yeah.
Wow. That's some story. So
Yeah.
like I was gonna ask as well, but you probably have answered this within that, but like was the fact that you started off with poi and diablo and then got into juggling, was just the fact that after a while, especially being in India, you practice juggling more, and that's how that kind of like stuck in terms of what your main sort of performing is?
It's a weird. It's a weird way. It's I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's no real answer for that. I just
Mm-hmm.
very much clicked with my prop
Yeah.
hoops at the time. I had other props with me, um, but I always like to find something a bit different to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so like when I mean, way back before all of this, I used to be a musician as well. So and I played bass guitar because I like to be a bit different. I didn't just pick guitar or drums or whatever. Yeah, that's another part of my life. We can talk about that if you want. But anyway, so I was like, oh, hoop juggling is really interesting. Not many people are doing it. It's nice. It's big. It's visual. I'm not much of a dancer and a mover, so like a big prop or multiple big props taking up space is really good for me
Mm-hmm.
because it means I don't have to waft around as
Yeah.
much as other performers. So that's kind of just where I clicked from it. But mostly it just comes from an obsession of doing things. And that just happened to be the thing I was obsessed with doing.
Yeah.
So, and things I'm obsessed with doing, I just do a lot. That comes out of kind of a mental health strap, to be honest. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of why it just happened to be the thing I was doing. And it just happened to be the thing I was doing a lot.
Yeah.
And
That's good that it keeps, it's something to, like you say, it's something to keep your mind occupied, especially like, getting into gaming, like, through COVID, because you couldn't do there was no circus shows, you couldn't do any performing.
exactly.
So it's like something to kind of just keep the brain ticking over. So in
Exactly.
terms of like the work you've done, the circus performing you've done, like you've traveled like quite extensively with that, I believe. So then how does
Mhm.
that come about? Is that just a case of like, are you part of like a circus troupe, or is it like sort of are you like self-employed in that manner where it's like people will just hire you because they know who you are and what your like
Mm.
affiliations are?
It's a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm self-employed. Um, Ultimately, I am self-employed, and people hire me essentially as a contractor when I perform. But a big part of my work is I'm part of a circus duo
Mm-hmm.
with my performance partner Lisa, and we do like a hoop juggling duo act together, and we do LED light shows together. So a lot of my traveling, aside from the cruise contract, has been through that. Um, and so us together, we got booked to go perform in China, in Lithuania. We performed in America this
Wow.
year at the International Jugglers Association Festival. Um, we also did last year as part of a trio there as well, which is pretty mad. Um, So yeah, a lot of my work has actually been in a duo. Actually, if I'm booked solo, it's usually just for like casual events, and
Yeah.
I'll just be like background entertainment, so not really on stage necessarily, more just like, oh look, there's a jug, go to a corporate event and there's just a random performer, that'll be me. Do you know what I mean? Usually. And yeah, and then there was one very large contract I did, which was a cruise ship contract
Mm-hmm.
that I was hired as a juggler in a production. So this was like two written shows, and it was kind of like circus-led musical theater kind of vibe. So I had to do like all dancing and stuff like that as well. And yeah, but that was more like a create an act for this, make it fit within that, and you are this character.
Yeah.
So creatively, I was, in terms of my skills, I wasn't limited, but the act was the act. It had
Yeah,
to
of
fit a
course.
kind of
Yeah.
brief. But so I did that for 7 months at the
Wow.
tail end of COVID. So I was on a ship for 7 months, bobbing around the Mediterranean and the Northern Europe.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Yeah, it was fun. It
Um,
was hard as well, but it was also fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Like, because you're pretty much working like near enough every night doing that, aren't you?
Well, circus.
Like on the
Um,
when we were on the cruise ship, I mean, like, that's more or
oh
less
yeah,
like
on the
full
cruise
time,
ship.
like every day.
On the cruise ship, it was like 6 days on, 1 day off.
Yeah.
And you would do up to 2 shows a day. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and is that just part of like the evening entertainment? So you got like your days off to kind of like during the day you got to go and
Yeah, yeah,
explore the
yeah.
different
So
cities, sort of thing.
it was very much, well, so the first month or two, we couldn't actually get off the ship because of COVID restrictions, but
Mhm.
it didn't really matter because we were learning a show anyway, so we
Yeah.
didn't really have time. We didn't really have time to get off. But when the time came around that the shows went live, eventually, the shows went live a lot later because of everyone was getting COVID. It was pretty dramatic. I got COVID. I was disembarked for 2 weeks,
Oh
put
wow.
in a hotel in Barcelona during my birthday, actually.
Oh
Fun
shit.
times. It was a good hotel. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Worst places you could have been, to be fair.
Yeah. So the show went out late, but by the time the show went out, things had kind of calmed down on the COVID front.
Yeah.
And then we were allowed in the day to go out where the ship was stopping. So I got to see loads of places in Italy, Malta, Parma, then Mallorca, all these kinds of places. So yeah, I got to see a lot of places eventually, which was fun.
Yeah. It's insane. Like,
Yeah.
it's such an amazing thing that takes you like all over the world. Like, like I'm blown away by that. Like, fair play. That's certainly like a massive accomplishment with what you've been doing, and I think it's like testament to sort of your mindset with it, that once you have something in front of you that interests you, you want to grind it out. So like, yeah, fair play, man. That's incredible. So just to go back to the gaming side of things, so obviously as a speedrunner, you'll know as well as anybody else that it comes with the risk of like burnout. Like, it is it can be like a mentally exhaustive thing. And obviously, with your stream schedule, you probably stream more days than you don't stream. So like, what sort of measures do you take to like avoid this? And to be able to grind out one speedrun category at a time for a fairly long period of time. Like, how do you avoid like the burnout, both mentally and physically, with that?
There comes a point with it where like I will push it more than most, I would say. But I do hit my limit. When I hit my limit, I normally go, okay, I've hit my limit. I'm not having fun. A very important thing for me is that I need to have fun.
Yeah.
There's a kind of fence between fun and frustration, which I'm happy to grind for a while.
Yeah.
I like that kind of fence. That's fun, but there is a point where you do fall off that fence, and you're like, okay, I need to do something else. When that happens, I just start streaming another game for fun. Really, like it's fairly simple. Like, or I start mixing up the content, and I'll just like do maybe one run or a bit of practice of Mario, and then I'll play some Zelda. I really like Zelda games for chilling out. So that's generally how I fix the burnout. I stop it before it happens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you don't have to just speedrun. You can just play games. And I'll just stream something else. Like I did like what did I do? I remember when Tears of the Kingdom came out. I played a lot of Tears of the Kingdom. Like those are some of my longest streams. Um, um, and that was a good break from the Mario. I think I needed that because I was doing 70 star a lot at the time, and I kind of hit my wall with 70 star. I'm like, okay, and then Tears of the Kingdom came out, and I'm like, thank God. And I'm like, I was just like, let's just pull 10-hour streams playing Tears of the Kingdom. And I was like, so I played that, got all shrines in that game and stuff like that. I was like, cool. Went back to Mario for a bit, played it for a bit, grinded for a bit. I remember I was grinding. That's when I switched to 120, kind of after that kind of period. And obviously the 120 kind of learning process is very arduous.
Yep.
Like it's so funny that like learning 16 stars here, learning 70 stars here, and then learning 120 stars like here.
Oh yes.
It's so much harder. But there was some things happening in the community, like the RTA league, the stage RTA league, where you just speedrun individual stages.
Yes. Yeah.
So that kind of eased me into it a better. And this was like my third proper attempt at trying to learn 120 because I tried two times before and just sacked it because I was like, I can't. And this actually tipped me over the edge. So then I was like, did 120 for a while. I think I got like the I got like a 2-hour 20 time. I'm like, okay. And then I hit burnout again. I'm like, okay, let's play Breath of the Wild and do another playthrough of Breath of the Wild, Zelda. Get all shrines in Breath of the Wild because I really like Tears of the Kingdom. Made me want to play Breath of the Wild again. And then that was my next break, like Zelda games. So basically it's just a knowing when you need to do something else, and not pushing yourself, not running yourself into the ground, basically, in my opinion.
No, of course. I think that's a good mindful approach to take to it because like I think that's the sort of approach that like not too many streamers would take. Like especially like in the realm of speedrunning, like you kind of see just people will hit their wall with it, but sort of they'll only realize way after they've hit the wall and it's be like and they just either take a long time off, you'll see them doing something else, or there's not at all. Like I mean I myself, like I have since stopped speedrunning because I just got to the point where I stopped enjoying it. But I think it was sort of on hindsight, I think I could have sort of realized I stopped enjoying it like long before I stopped doing it. But you kind of you just still want to try and push yourself, try and keep doing it, but then it's just becomes like a sort of, you kind of look back and think, oh well, it must have been a long time because so it's a good approach to take because like it still in that regard keeps your kind of like love alive for it. I mean, it keeps your desire to kind of like better yourself at it, I suppose, and improve like in the best possible way that you can.
One thing, sorry to interrupt. One thing I will say as well is that I have kind of a theory that may be linked to some kind of truth, but it is a theory that speedrunning is very much like juggling in terms of progress. It's like small victories, you know what I mean? And a lot of failure, essentially. In juggling, you have to be okay with a lot of failure and then grind through it to get to those victories. And it's exactly the same process to me with speedrunning. So I kind of have that mental mindset for it, I think, somewhat. But then I still know when to like give it a break because also in juggling, it's very important to have breaks because you can't physically just do it all the time. And often when you have a break, it's like a basic neuroscience thing with anything you do. If you have a break, give yourself time, your brain builds those pathways, they become solidified, you come back and then you're better. Like, so that's generally what happens with speedrunning as well.
That's amazing. I never really kind of looked at it that way before. I suppose like it's kind of like
there's a really interesting TED talk on it when it comes. It's actually called Juggling and Neuroscience.
Wow.
And how it works. So it's very interesting, and I kind of took that approach, and it does work. It makes total sense.
No, that's brilliant. I suppose in a sense, it's like kind of like a lot of things, even if it's like sort of like physical sort of like labor on your body, where you have to if you're using your muscles, you have to rest your muscles, and then you get stronger kind of after like a little bit of a break, and that also goes on the mental side of things. Like that's I think it's kind of funny that philosophy is probably really like slapped on. I say philosophy, but it's more fact, isn't it? It's probably something that's kind
It's
of
a
slept
theory,
on.
but it's a
Theory, yeah.
theory that's very
Yeah.
based in potential fact,
Yeah,
I would
but
say.
I mean, it's I think though, like anybody like listening to this who has like kind of grinded something that's quite mentally taxing would probably be able to attest to that themselves. That they probably just kind
Mm,
of once they've taken a break and come back to something, they kind of come back a little bit better, a bit mentally refreshed, and like it's sort of the whole thing with having a clearer head about anything. You
yeah.
just kind of are able
Mm,
to kind of um I think achieve better things or achieve more in terms of what you're
mm,
wanting to because the goal is kind of easier. You're not just doing it without being
yeah.
able to get a straight thought at it.
There's one more thing that really helps me, and that is because I have a OCD. Like, I'm not talking like washing hands OCD. I have like really bad OCD, like
Mm-hmm.
inner thought OCD, like clinically diagnosed by a
Okay.
psychologist, kind of levels of OCD. And these things that I do, the things that require like total focus are like the way I manage it.
Yeah.
Like, because with the things that require complete and total focus, it empties my brain out of all of the
Mm.
kind of ruminations and overthinking. So
Yeah.
you'll find with a lot of the things I do, music, I'm a bass player as well. It takes a long time to learn, a lot of focus, and then juggling, obviously, and then speedrunning too. So these are the things I use. So it's kind of like a therapy in itself as well, which
Yeah.
is kind of helpful. That probably helps me to push it a little bit more than maybe some other people. Maybe I don't know, but
Yeah. Well, it makes
um,
sense when you
there's
put it
still
like that. Yeah.
there's still a limit though. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
for
There's still a
sure.
limit
For
where I need to like
sure.
switch up the focus somewhere
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah, of course. Because there's only like so much you can actually focus on something before it just everything just blurs and it's kind of like
Mm,
your brain just turns into mush at that point.
yeah.
Like, which do you know what? Fair enough. I think it's definitely good to kind of keep that like focus on things because like you say it's a good way to avoid burnout.
Mhm.
No, brilliant. Like, so let's put all of the like professional life and the streaming and everything, the entertainment side, just to the side for 1 second, and let's talk a little bit more about just yourself as a person. What does BLJuggler like to get up to in his downtime? What are some of your hobbies and interests, outside of all of this, and maybe some things about you that we might not know? I know we've covered like a fair bit outside of this, but is there anything particular that the audience might not know?
Honestly, I put so much out there that I don't have hobbies. Like all of my hobbies I do full send.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a bass player. That would be one thing. I am a bass player. I spent a lot. I went to music college. That was
Oh
like my
wow.
first thing. That was the first thing I did. That was the first obsession that I had essentially, since I was 14. So I've played bass for 20 years now, um, and I did it a lot, and it was like the first kind of proper performance thing I ever did seriously. So I guess that's one thing not many people know about me. I am a musician.
Yeah.
Um, I do little bits on stream every now and then, like I'll balance a ukulele on my head and play guitar and stupid stuff like this. Like, um, so yeah, that's one thing. Other than that, not really. I have a wonderful girlfriend, and I'm very lucky that she's in my life, and she understands all of this streamer gamer nonsense and leaves me to do my thing. I'm very very lucky. Um, I know she's probably watching now, so love you, babe. Um, um, and so yeah, that's been a recent development over the last year in my life, having someone in my
Mm,
life.
amazing.
Um, uh, Other than that, it's just all juggling and gaming, literally. Like I don't do anything else. I watch and then watching Twitch, like juggling, gaming, and watching Twitch. That is my life. Like,
No, you know
oh, I
what?
teach. Oh, I teach English. Like that's like
Hmm.
my like day to day job.
Yeah.
Kind of like my side hustle, which is not a side hustle. Sometimes it's like a full send thing. Depends what's going on. It's a very flexible job I do. I teach Chinese children English
Oh wow.
on an app, on a Chinese app, um, which is yeah, it keeps me ticking over
Yeah.
financially. So,
And
and that's something I've done since lockdown.
does that require you to
Um,
speak any Chinese at all, or is that just all English based?
no, no, they don't want you to speak Chinese. That's the whole point.
Oh,
They want
okay.
they want the teachers to speak English. So, uh, speaking Chinese is kind of actively discouraged. I think, more
Okay.
than anything. I do know I do know a couple of words. I'll probably butcher them most of the time because the tones are so bad. And
Hmm.
like shua, which is like say,
Yeah.
or chongfu, which is repeat.
Uh-huh.
Those are probably the only two words I'll
Yeah.
say. Like if I have to, and I probably say them wrong to be honest, like because it's so hard to pronounce. But I normally get the reaction I want when I say those things, so on with
Oh,
it.
well, that's
Um,
yeah, that's half the battle. So like, okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
whenever you're then teaching, like, do these people come in with like some level of English speaking to
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
help?
So
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. So it's very regionally dependent on where they're
Hmm.
from in China.
Yep.
Um, it's very very different. So it's kind of funny because sometimes I'll get like I teach like 5-year-olds to 14-year-olds. So it's a
Okay.
mixed bag, and they could have 4 kids in each class, up to 4 kids in each class. So sometimes I'll have like a 5 or 6-year-old who's basically fluent, and sometimes I'll have like a 13 or 14-year-old who can barely say their name. So it's very mixed. It's very mixed.
Yeah.
Most kids have a basic level of English. Like they can say hello, my name is, I'm this many years old. So they have that kind of basis. But then it's just like trying to make their English better,
Yeah, of
essentially, and
course.
trying
Of
to
course.
like make their build their vocabulary,
Yeah.
say things correctly, fix things like plurals and the small kind of connective words. It's the in these kind of words they miss out a lot. So it's kind of basic stuff like that.
Yeah. How did you
Yeah.
get into doing that?
My friend was doing it back in kind of late 20 teens, like
Hmm.
2018, 2019. And she was like, "Oh, I think you should do this. You'd be really good at it because you kind of need to be like. It's not just like you're a teacher. It's like you kind of need to be theatrical and entertaining as well
Yeah,
because you
of
need to like
course.
keep attention because you're trying to keep attention. You're trying to keep Chinese children's attention on a tiny screen. Do you know what I mean? So in a tiny window, like you would be on Twitch. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So you have to be kind of very active and entertaining, and you have your toys. Like I have my Mario plushie here, or like I have the star. I use these in my classes. It's pretty funny. Um, so I have toys, and I use the toys to demonstrate things. Do you know what I mean? So and I can be very loud and annoying and attention seeking if I want to be. So that kind of works when you're trying to get attention. Um, so yeah, around that kind of time, my friend was like, "I think you'd be really good at this. You should try it out." I tried it out and started working for one company. I won't say the name of the company; it's not worth it. But
No, fair.
I worked for this company for a long time, and then the China brought in some new legislation which almost kind of killed the industry.
Oh wow.
Uh, when it comes to native English teachers teaching Chinese children. There's a whole load of politics behind it. I won't really go into it, but basically, China just makes split decisions like that, and it could all change. So there was a point where it kind of slipped off a lot. I kind of left that company. I tried to get like a real job, like a normal job, doing like nursery kind of like working in almost a nursery kind of place where they did
Yeah.
classes. I tried to switch to that. And it was the first time I had worked under someone like being an employee for a very long time. Did it for a couple of weeks, had a mental breakdown, couldn't
Oh
do it.
shit.
And I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything for a while. And then a week later, I got that cruise contract I was telling you about.
Yes.
So I went and did the cruise contract. So it's kind of like universe going, no, do circus. You can do that. And then I did that. But then the English teaching kind of just started happening again over the last year. And like my schedule just started getting booked again. So this is how I know working for like China is. Sometimes it's like there just needs to be a die down period, and then suddenly people just do it
Yeah.
again, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, just like
Um,
massive ebbs and flows with that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But now it's like pretty stable, and hopefully that will continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's kind of
yeah.
cool how that's kind of developed as well. And obviously it kind of had to with COVID, because I don't know if it was the same for yourself, but I remember like whenever I was in school, like doing like GCSE French and Spanish, we would have had like the French assistant or the Spanish assistant come in, and it was like an actual French and Spanish person. And
Hmm.
that was like, the same idea. It was the kind of, yes, we could speak a basic level of these languages, but it was delivered by somebody from the same country as us. So
Yeah.
it was like their way of kind of having like a native talk to us. So in like they didn't, then they like opted to not speak any English, just so then we could like really kind of like brush up and like perfect the grammar and things like that. Like, but I don't know what kind of state that's in right now, but like I like the fact that like you can kind of be like do that on like a global sort of scale, just through
Mm.
like your phone screen or your computer screen, just because it's that it's right there in front of you and you're able to do it. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of awesome. Like because saves a hell of a lot of traveling anyway.
Yeah, yeah. No, I very much like the fact that I can travel like 10 feet to work every day, and that works pretty well with my lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure.
uh, Maybe a little too well. You need to
Yeah.
consider leaving the house a bit more. Um, it's winter. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's
it's getting
fine.
too cold. Like it's yeah, it's
Mm.
fine. So, and in terms of you playing bass as well, like so, was that just something you've always like played, or like did it ever go any further? Were you ever like performing with that, like was it in a band, or was it just a case of you just played because you solely just enjoyed it?
My mum threw an Argos catalog at me one day and was like, "Pick what you want for Christmas." Um, I thought I picked a guitar, and it turned out I picked a bass. Um, and that's how that journey started. I remember, and the bass arrived for Christmas,
Oh, nice.
and it was like one of these really cheap basses you get from like Argos, like I think the brand was like Encore or whatever, and
Yeah.
it didn't work. The amp came without a cable, and at the time, I didn't know that that was a very simple cable to like have. It's just a kettle lead.
Yep.
But I was like really upset that I couldn't use my bass amp, and I thought it was like some special cable because I'm like 14 and stupid. I didn't really know. But it came with a VHS cassette tape, um, like a really really cheesy like, "Hi, my name is Mike Floyd. This is how you play bass," kind of video. And I still learned. I still learned. I still just played it unplugged, and I still learned, the basic arpeggios. That's how that started. And then from there, I was really annoyed because I just picked my GCSEs and I was in year 9 and I didn't pick music and I just started learning bass, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
But I still learned, and ironically, I got into the school band even though I didn't study music at school. And because the bass players are few and far between, so everyone needs one. It's really good. And Yeah, I just learned from there really. And like anything in my life, I do it full send. So that's what I did. And I got pretty good at it. And did it for a while. I remember, so it was in the later part of high school, and then I went into college, like normal college. In A level college, one of the things I studied was music tech.
Hmm.
Not quite what I wanted to study, but I couldn't do music because I didn't have like any theory behind me or enough theory.
Yeah.
But I still was able to play instruments on that course. Like it was really funny because I was like one of the only people in the room who wasn't like a producer and that could actually play instruments. So I was like, for everyone's like recordings, like they had to record live music. I was playing like the guitar and the bass and doing like uh poor them. I was doing some of the vocals for them as well. And that's no one needs that in their life, but needs must. Do you know what I mean? So somewhere in the back catalogue of my college's kind of systems, there's like a really, really poor recording of me singing, which is fun. But yeah, and then in A level college, I got halfway through doing my A levels, I got into music college. And then I just kind of was just like, I am not interested in my A levels whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm doing music college, did the bare minimum in my A level college, and then went to music college when I was 19 and did 3 years at music college. And there I was actually playing in a band and actually recording music and really, really grinding. So that's where I kind of did that. It got to the point I was in 3 different bands at one point, played at Glastonbury.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah, on the smaller stages, not like pyramid
It
stage, like on the
still
smaller
doesn't
stage.
matter. It's still Glastonbury. Holy
Yeah,
crap!
yeah. So I did that, which is fun. Played a lot of music, but wasn't making any money.
Mm,
So I was still a bartender, and music's very hard to
yeah.
establish yourself in and to actually make a living in, even if you're like a good session player, or even if you're in like a good covers band. It's a fraction of what I earn as a circus performer now.
Of course.
essentially.
Yeah.
So I kind of switched up my kind of what I was doing. That's the thing I like to do as well. Suddenly I'll just be like, okay, I've done what I want to do with this now. I'm going to do something else.
Okay.
And then I switched to circus, started from the bottom, worked my way up to a performable level. I hit my golden circus now. The next thing might be streaming. I don't know. We'll see.
That's I still
Yeah,
can't get over the fact you played at Glastonbury. Okay, so let me just touch on this a second. So
yeah.
is there any material that we can like look up from that band you were in?
You don't want to look at that on stream. But yes, probably. I'm not sure if there's any material with me in it anymore because
Mhm.
that band has very much progressed since I left it.
Right.
Um, but there is my music college band is definitely on SoundCloud, and that's some of the best content musically I've ever made. I would
Mhm.
say. The band was called Sarajevo, as in
Sarajevo.
the capital of Bosnia.
Yes.
Um, so it's a very particular. I'll see if I can find a link for you because it's a very particular link on SoundCloud.
Ah, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Because
sorry,
I would definitely be very keen to hear some of this, truthfully. Like, I know it's sort of digging up something from years gone by, but I think it's just, I mean, it's not so, this is not something I would have ever known. And like, this is kind of like the whole big part of like, why I would do this, why I have these conversations is to get to know people. And I'm like
mm,
blown away. And especially like, but even if it's the smaller stage, playing at Glastonbury, it's like, it's no small feat, to be real. Like, that's incredible. Like, holy crap. Like, so like,
mhm.
who is that band then you played at Glasgow with, like
That band was called Unity and Division.
Unity and Division?
Um, and it was kind of like a burlesque punk band.
Oh, okay.
And it was really interesting actually. The two women, it was fronted by like a woman and a man, and they were both nearly in their 40s, and I was like 19. And they needed a bass player, and I had just joined this band, and at the time I was just like, I don't know if I could do another band, blah blah blah, because I was already in two bands, and they were like, oh, we're playing at Glastonbury, and I was like, yep, I'll do it. Um, I just said yep straight away. Um, yeah, this is a really awkward band to find on SoundCloud. I know it's there though. I
Yeah.
know it's there. I can
That's all
find it
right.
every
We
month.
can, yeah,
Yeah.
we can sort that out after. Like, so what was the experience like playing at Glastonbury? Like, was it I mean, obviously this is coming from me. I've never performed on like a stage like in that sort of aspect, but like, was it just like a normal gig, or was there something like kind of, overwhelming
it
about
was
it?
it was my first ever festival experience, and I was there for 8 days.
Wow.
So I was there before punters were let in, obviously, because performers are generally, and I was there after punters had left. So it wasn't like a normal 3-day festival
Mm-hmm.
kind of experience for me. It was like very, very full on. It was great. I loved it. I loved it. Uh, I learned a lot because at that age, you're kind of still working out how social etiquette in
Uh-huh.
those kinds of environments and stuff like that. So there are certain attitudes I had at that time which I kind of regret now. I wouldn't say regret. I just like I've like grown up a lot since
Yeah,
then.
of
Do you know what
course,
I
of
mean?
course.
But it was amazing. It was incredible. I'm glad that my first experience at any kind of major festival was something that big
Mm-hmm.
because anything else now is like a walk in the park. I've done like I've performed like lots of festivals, both musically and circus and stuff like that. So yeah, it was incredible though. I played like 6 or 7 times there
Oh wow,
at
really?
like on 5 different stages
Yeah.
because I think we were booked to do 2 stages, and then what my band decided to do, where they were like go around to like all of the venues and be like, "Yo, has anyone dropped out? Can we play?" Do you know what I mean? And then from that we got like loads of other slots at the festival.
Brilliant. And those are
So
the
yeah,
same band, yeah?
same band,
Yeah.
same
Fair
band.
play.
Yeah.
Like that's
Um,
wow.
Yes, so there we were playing in like outdoor venues, indoor venues. One stage we played was like really cool. I think the venue was called Slippery Dick's Love Shack or something crazy, like typical Glastonbury kind of style.
Yeah.
And it was like the thing about this venue was that it was like the venue where there's the venue that all the workers from Glastonbury would go to after their shift had finished.
Yeah.
So I remember we were booked to play at like midnight, but then the loads of the tech team were kind of inebriated, is the polite word to put it. And we didn't actually ended up going on stage until like 2 a.m. or something.
Shit.
But by that time the place was like rammed and it was actually like really, really cool. So yeah, that was definitely a really, really real highlight of my music kind of journey.
Wow.
Yeah, super fun. Yeah.
Like that's
Mm.
and like you still play like a little bit like on stream and stuff,
I teach.
or you
I
teach as
teach
well?
bass.
Yeah.
I do. I have a bass student. I have one bass student. I try and teach every week on and off.
Oh, real.
Through doing that, I still play. Yeah. I kind of got an itch to try and do it a bit more recently. In kind of, I don't know, I'd like to get into like a function band, like a wedding band maybe, or something. Because back when I was playing bass, I didn't have a driving license, I didn't have a car, I was relying on other people. But now I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I have all those things now. I could easily just play bass in a band, and it'll be a lot easier, and earn a bit of money. But it's kind of like my fallback. It's kind of like my old man fallback. Do you know what I mean? I think because like I see like lots of old guys in function bands, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I can do when I'm older. That's like my future.
Fair enough.
Um,
It's a good aspiration in some way, like,
but
especially
yeah,
because it's something else to
mm,
keep your mind fixated on should ever, everything else at the moment kind of
mm,
either dry
yeah,
up or you just feel like you've gotten everything that you can out of it.
yeah. Like it's something that I still know is there, and I can easily like. I wouldn't say I was at the level I was, but I'm definitely like still 80% of it is still there. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
more than enough to like play music
Oh
quite
yeah,
well.
for
So,
sure. Like especially for teaching as
um,
well. Like, you do need to have that kind
yeah,
of like that knowledge, the sense of, being able to do it rather than just kind of like be able to pick it up and play music. You
mm,
kind of need to understand like a lot of things like about it. So like yeah, of course.
yeah.
So I just want to round off here just with one final question for you.
Mhm.
So looking into the future, both as a streamer and a performer, do you have any specific goals regarding these things? Like, do you have anything in particular that you want to achieve, or are you content with where things are and just happy to keep going as is?
When it comes to streaming, I have had lots happen in my life. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I've had quite a few grievances in my life, which I've had plans in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and they have always been derailed by various things that have happened in my life. Through that, I try to just have a vague idea
Yeah.
of where I'd like things to go, rather than I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And then normally I kind of then just put it in the hands of the universe and I just do the things that I do. And normally it comes to me. So I had that with circus where I was just like, my main goal was to perform on the cruise ship, but I wasn't like attached to it.
Yeah.
I was just like, if that happens, great. And it did. It landed in my lap, literally. And I'm like, great, did that, cool. So when it comes to streaming, I'm very much of the thought process that you shouldn't go into streaming with like oh, I'm gonna, be big or it's gonna blow up or whatever, because it won't. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh, for
That's
sure.
the reality of it. Like, especially if you have that attitude, I just try and put that energy into my stream and the production of my stream, my gaming and being entertaining, and then through that I hopefully will see growth. And I've seen a little bit recently, which is nice. It ebbs and flows for me. Like I'll have periods of growth and then decline and growth and then decline. But one day maybe it will just go and
Yeah.
that'll be fine. I'd really like for it to pop off. I'd love to be a streamer, but it's not something I'm attached to.
Yeah.
I am lucky in the sense that I have things in my life is structured as such that I can put a lot of time into it. Um, and that's good. So I've got the time to put into it. My partner's very understanding of it. I have the infrastructure to do it. So I'm doing it, regardless of if anyone watches. I'm doing it. So I just keep doing it, and
Yeah.
then we'll see where it goes. I have no set goals of streaming. I just like to entertain people, and I like to play games, and I like to, interact with people, and that's kind of my goal.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, one person in the chat talking is better than 50 people not talking, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
no, I've had a lot of people say the same thing to me, and like, yeah, I think everything you said is 100%. Like, you have to do it because you enjoy it, regardless of how many people are watching, and just kind of like sometimes it is just a case of seeing where it goes. Like, because you can put in as much or as little work as you want, and the results may vary. It's sort of like
it is.
I
It is
think
that kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I think like, you could put in an incredible amount of work into your setup, into your streams, and it's the sort of thing where it's like you might end up like peaking at like 5 years, but you could literally be streaming on like a shitty laptop with no camera, and you could be like streaming to fucking 400 people, for example. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those things. Like it just there's no real talent, is there really? So it's yeah, I think like just sort of like, and so it was somebody, it was this actually Craigie Boy Dead Guys Drives, who's always said, like he said on here as well, he was just like consistency. That's just the main thing.
Yeah.
Just be consistent. Just do you.
Mhm.
And I think as well, it's probably good, like especially with what you do, because of the what your current grind is at the moment. People always know what to expect. They know to expect some form of, at the moment anyway, some form of 120 star grind, whether it be runs, whether it be practice. It's it's still going to be something to in that degree. So yeah, that's fair, and that's I feel like that's as good an answer as any, because like it's just, it kind of shows your reasoning to do it. Like, as much as you say you would want to be a streamer, but like this, in terms of everything else going on in your life, like it's probably secondary. It's just something you get to do, which is like
Yeah.
a enjoyable part of your life. And
Yeah,
like
it's like a
that's,
secondary thing. It's a secondary thing that I do, but I do it a lot.
yeah, of course.
And that's how all these things start in my life. It's how juggling started, and I ended up doing really well with it. And
Yeah.
that's just the way I see streaming. And I'm just like, so like the way people see streaming is like, I'm not relying on anything to happen with streaming. It would be nice if something did happen with streaming, and it became quite a sustainable like form of everything, like interaction, income, whatever. But like streaming is a really, really hard thing to get into. And I do it a lot. But then juggling was as well.
Yeah, of course.
And I made something out of juggling. So it could happen with streaming.
Yeah,
So
of course.
like that's the way I kind of look at it. But I'm not like it's gonna happen, because I am realistic with it as well,
Yeah, of
objectively.
course.
So
No, that's
I'm not like wool over eyes kind of situation. I'm just lucky that like all of the stuff I buy for my stream and the production of my stream also overlaps into like my job as well. So it's kind of all intertwined in a very good way, that like I'm not just throwing money and time
yeah,
into something that's not going to pay off, because it works for other things in my life. So
yeah,
yes,
exactly. Like it's
it's
like an investment that goes into
yeah,
everything, not just the one thing. That's, yeah, of course, of
exactly,
course. No,
yeah.
that's incredible. So, Callum, it has been amazing interviewing you. I've absolutely loved every minute of our chat this evening. Do you have any final thoughts for the listeners at home and the viewers currently live on Twitch?
Final thoughts. Do things you enjoy doing. I think people don't do that in this world. People are people are too like attached to security and think that leads to a happy life. I've spent a lot of my life pursuing things which most people think are risky, in terms of security and longevity and financial security, but I'm okay and I'm quite happy. So take some chances in life. That's what I'd say. Like,
Amazing. Solid advice as ever. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing today. Appreciate you taking the time
thank
out of
you.
your Sunday evening to come on behind the camera.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so my name is AndyGames _94. My guest today has been BLJuggler. You can find him on both Twitch and TikTok at BLJuggler. Yeah, thank you again for tuning into another episode of Behind the Camera with AndyGames. We will be back again with another guest in a future installment. But until then, thanks again and take care. Peace.
Thank you. Bye.